All things considered, I wonder if shooting that policeman made me the man that I am. In the Rue Mouffetard this morning, there was a man who reminded me for a fleeting moment of Sam. That gaunt, scribed face, how so world famous. I felt my hand rise unbidden in greeting, but the fellow turned away, a defeated slump in his shoulders that somehow irritated me. I miss my upright friend. Once over whiskey, I asked him how it was that he flew free. Long silence, then, I suppose I just refused. That cold, blank stare. Then, unexpectedly, he reached across and squeezed my arm. We veterans. We come to our lives in different ways, those of us who were forced, shocked, or tricked into waking. I mean, of course, our real lives, but very few people have real lives now, by which I mean lives over which they deliberate, lives they are prepared to answer for at the bar of extinction. I've been awakened myself for what seems, when I think of it, a very long time. Whether this is good or bad, I cannot say. I have been, I think, exceptionally lucky. Taking all in all, I have had exactly the life I was made fit for. From time to time I have met others like me, people, for instance, who stare quietly for perhaps a fraction too long at what prompts immediate emotional response in others. A car crash, a lover's quarrel in public, the corpse of an acquaintance. I used to think of us as hungry souls, somehow defective in empathy. Not so, I eventually learned. Not so at all. What wakes us? Some very few, it seems, are born fully awake. I have seen infants in the Jardin de Luxembourg who could chill you with a look. I have felt that chill, then that sudden vertigo of mutual recognition. Always I hurry by. Some others, and here I include myself, are woken by chance or so-called chance, generally, it seems, by some irrevocable act or gesture, a moment of absolute commitment to anything. It can be anything. As long as one commits, as long as the act is irrevocable, cannot be unmade, cannot be explained away. And therefore I begin. All things considered, shooting that policeman was very likely what made me the man that I am. Vincent called by last night. 2 rings, a pause, 2 rings. He's done that from the first day he came here. I imagine he does it everywhere. An announcement. Here I am. It's me. Twilight in the street below. A faint glow still over the rooftops. I tossed him down the keys, always amused at how he stands there, hands by his sides, until the very last moment, then, right-handed, snatching the keys from the air. His satisfied nod that my aim has approved. Vincent, Vincent, who never wastes a gesture. I left the door open, went to put coffee on. You shouldn't do that, he says, standing in the small hallway. Anyone might be hanging around on the stairs. I smile, he smiles. He knows I can see the landing from the kitchen. He knows I looked down the stairs when I opened the apartment door. Vincent's a rangy Algerian in his late 20s, a spring in him in all that he does and says. As usual, he paces while the coffee brews. Vincent, he said, the second time we met, offering his hand and a mocking grin. Call me Vincent. A challenge, a small offering, a test. I said nothing, squeezed his hand, smiled. My silence made him my friend. This is a grey suit night, a black silk t-shirt underneath, the long sleeves a perfect half-centimetre past the cuffs, the gold-rimmed spectacles in his top pocket. I was around, he said. Thought I'd pop in. Still pacing the room, checking to see what new books I'd added to the crammed shelves. We sip our coffees at the tall window, watching the light fade. So he says, still looking away, I've thought about this, and, well, I think you should write the book of your life. Vincent, from time to time, to keep himself and for other reasons, steals cars. At least that's how I understand it. I don't really mind one way or the other. But once, when he claimed he was engaged in redistributing wealth, I checked him. No, Vincent, you steal cars. It's a fact. Facts matter. You should write the book of your life, he says. You should put down in words what it was to be here, what it was to be you. This is one of the things I like about Vincent. He has a gift sometimes for knowing exactly what to say, exactly when it needs to be said. Somehow he has snagged on to a stray thought that has been drifting like a small cloud out at the edges of my mind for some time now. Where did I read the phrase? At a certain point, one becomes aware that one is dealing with time remaining. No matter. It started me thinking, no, reflecting on what a life I have had, what an odd life it has been. Not odd as in peculiar, but singular, certainly singular, and unshared for the most part. When did the idea start? That I should write it all out, leave some mark, some trace, some evidence that once upon a time there lived a man who had the life that I call mine. No matter. I will, I said. I'll start tomorrow. He put his cup down, satisfied. If I'd surprised him, he did not show it. Certainly I had surprised myself. Good, he said. That's good. Okay, I have things to do. He gave me a long, appraising look. You sure? I gave him a slow wink. I'm sure. It's a good idea. On the way out the door, putting on those spectacles, he looked back over his shoulder. You were thinking about this, yes? I was. I shut the door behind him, softly, listened in vain for his footsteps on the stairs going down, waited to hear the street door close. I went to my desk between the windows that give on to the street. I sat down, I closed my eyes, I listened to my own breathing for a long time. I was wondering how to begin. I rarely feel frail. I have what they call a sturdy build, a word I approve of. Sturdy. A good build in a soldier or sailor, you'd say. Able for what comes. When the last of the night had fallen into place, when the full dark was everywhere behind me in the large apartment, I stood and undressed where I was, in the front room lit by a yellow streetlight, not questioning the impulse. Jacket over the back of the wooden chair, trousers neatly over the jacket, the rest folded and placed in a neat pile on the seat. I used my bare feet out of the slippers, the better to feel the cool tiles of the bathroom underfoot when I'd go through. Standing before the full-length mirror, regarding my body, I felt undeniably frail, as if I could no longer have confidence in my bones, as if the sinews and tendons and muscles might fail in their job of keeping me mobile, alert, and active. Well, that happens, and it happens to all of us from time to time. The thing is to look yourself straight in the eye, something most people, myself included, find it hard to do. To hold your own gaze without wavering, that's the thing. To call yourself back, to summon the will and bring it home firmly. This morning, I woke smoothly with a strong sense of animal power humming in my veins. I lay without opening my eyes, sending myself out to the different rooms, touching the walls, admiring the polished wooden floors, the few but tasteful rugs. Taking stock of myself, my own little world, so carefully and painstakingly assembled. When I saw that all was good, I rose smoothly like a young man, showered, gathered my clothes from the front room, dressed, and went out for bread. As you step off my landing onto the wide, spiralling stairs, the first wooden tread creaks. So does the first tread on the next flight down, and the first tread on the flight leading down to the hall. Henri did that many years ago, loosened those threads so that I would always hear when someone was climbing the stairs. Too well made, he said. A good carpenter all the same. I make a point of starting my daily forays into the world by testing this little device of Henri's, a way, I suppose, of keeping him alive in my mind. No, better, since I must begin to think like a writer now, as an homage to his thoroughness and his care for me. I have lived here for nearly 40 years on the third floor of this shabby but decent building, one occupied apartment to each of the first 3 floors. For reasons I could never discover, the apartments on the floor above mine have been empty for decades. When I step down into the dark, double-height hallway, when my foot falls on the polished, muted green tiles, I hear myself always give a small sigh of contentment. The place pleases me, mine and not mine, familiar but always other. There is no hall like this in all of Cork where I was born. I register this every single time I go in or out, but now I rarely think about it. There is a kind of vanity about this. The hallway reminds me that I have made my life my own. The French love their bread. I noticed this from the start, but more than their bread, they love the idea of going to the boulanger. I think it speaks to them of civility. They are a private people who fetishize, solemnize every action conducted in public. Thus, it is not enough that I go to the bakery, buy bread, return home, and make my breakfast. There are first the expected people on the street to be acknowledged, people one knows to nod to, people with whom one has spoken in the past and may again, people whom one is obliged to greet by name by some minor inquiring courtesy. In the bakery itself, one waits in the short queue for Monsieur or Madame to acknowledge one, to ask if one desires the usual. Ideally, to be fully in tune with the rituals, one then fumbles in a worn coin purse for the handful of coins required. Those who come to the counter with the exact change already in hand are frowned upon, but so discreetly that only the regulars notice the faint arching eyebrow of Monsieur or Madame. I like all this. No, better, it pleases me. This morning, business concluded, baton under my arm, I decide on a coffee before retracing my steps. I do this seldom. I associate the impulse with some unacknowledged process arriving at its conclusion, the conclusion signaling itself by desiring a small espresso. I cross the street. It is early autumn, certainly warm enough to sit outside. The waiter arrives, takes my modest order, departs without a word. It is the young Spanish fellow with the earring, the ponytail. There is nothing beyond appearance obviously interesting about him. I have taught him not to speak to me. He thinks I'm an old grouch. Good. It suits me. So what is it then, old man? I have decided, it seems, in my sleep that, yes, I will write the book, as Vincent suggests, and I will write it in English. I inhaled a bit of aroma of the coffee. I take a first taste. So, but how to go about this? Well, obviously a long tour from start to finish. Well, nearly finish, eh? But how tedious that might become. I did this, I did that, then I did this, that happened. No. Boring, tedious, and somehow dishonest. And the danger that I would be tempted to explain myself. As so often happens. Once you embark on something and an obstacle arises, the solution came by itself. I will write the book twice. Twice, Joseph? Yes. One strand faithful to the line from cradle to grave, now stop that. And a second strand like a diary in present time, recording whatever reflections are prompted by the unfolding story, how these bend and inflect my days as they take the stage. Oh, for fuck's sake, I scold myself. Whatever happens, for the love of Jesus, do not become an author. I hear the accents of my faraway Cork in that inner voice, and am suddenly buoyed up by the thought that I have never lost that bracing native instinct to pull down the high flown. My coffee has gone cold. I beckon to the boy. He brings me a fresh cup, and now I am all practicality. Will I need paper then? The papeterie en soufflot? No. This also, it seems, is decided. I will write direct on the screen. It would be prudent to save as I go on a flash stick, yes? But of course, flash stick, not paper. Off to the shop then. No time like the present, Joseph. Up and at them. I leave a small but excessive tip. A tentative smile from the boy as he clears the table. I smile back. Breakfasted, cuff buttons unfastened, I switch on the laptop, open a Word file, label it book, all very efficient. Then, inevitably, I skive off, seduced by the day's news, the sorcerer's ease with which I can roam the world. Libe, BBC, Irish Times Today, superstitiously the Irish Examiner. Equally, predictably, in a sudden flush of distaste with myself, I log off. The perpetually cool Vincent, it makes me smile now to remember it, was astonished to find I own a laptop, even more astonished that it's a Mac. He was so embarrassed at letting his mask slip, I hadn't the heart to tell him I have a high-speed broadband connection. He finds me disconcerting enough as it is. Sometimes it's true, I enjoy feeling smug. Henri used to say, a good weapon feels right by the intuition of the hand. That's why I bought a Mac. Machines should be fit for purpose. I catch a stray thought, reel it back in to examine it. What I feel about this machine is like what I feel about the hallway below. I open a second file and label it Time Present. Record the morning so far. Now, it would seem I am writing 2 books, or better, 2 books in one. Noting time present as I record time past. Ah, God damn it, concentrate, you old fool. Very well. I was born in Cork in 1940. I was an only child. My parents died when the car in which they were travelling went into the river near Blackrock. They died in the car, as did a driver, a neighbour and friend. His wife, the front seat passenger, survived. Nobody ever told me how. She moved away from the neighbourhood a year later. I know it was because she could not bear to see me on the street, but I told this to no one, then or since. It was a look that would pass between us. I thought she was lucky to have survived, that's all, but she saw reproach in my eyes where there was none, and could not deal with it. I was 10 when they died. This was 1950. I had begun to see things directly, to know things without having to reason them out. Perhaps this is why teachers feared me, without understanding that their dislike of me was in fact a kind of fear. I was 10, as I say, and grief-struck, but I decided then and there that I would choose where and when to show this grief, that I would decide in whom to confide this grief. Was I a kind of monster? Not at all. I knew this from the start. I disappointed the neighbours, of course, and the aunts, the uncles, the teachers, even the priest, by what seemed to them a serene, unfeeling composure. Disappointed, certainly, but now that I sit here and call it to mind, I see that I horrified them. Unnatural child, Mrs. Buckley hissed to Mrs. Carney as I passed by the day after the funeral. I heard the hatred in that, let me tell you, and I was angry, certainly, but in some other way unmoved. I was a voracious reader. I could not for a long time work out where the boundary lay between things reported from the world beyond me and things made up in books. Mrs. Buckley hissed. I filed that away. At the graveside, the day of the funeral, people kept telling me to be brave. This made me impatient. I knew already that I was brave, and brave had nothing at all to do with the deep, silent darkness looming up all around me. I told myself to be patient. I looked around me carefully, examining the crowd one by one, separating with a kind of unblaming dispassion the living from the already dead. I saw surprisingly few living souls, and they saw me. And they saw my grief and knew it was real. In the years that were left to me in Cork, not one of those people encountered in the street ever failed to acknowledge me with a nod, a kind word, or sometimes met in a shop, a coin for a comic or some sweets. I thought of them, without dwelling on it, as the good people. I lived with my grandfather, Michael John. I first laid eyes on him, the phrase is exact, in the winter of 45. We were living in his house, a big house in Blackpool, bigger by far than the houses of any of my schoolmates. And I knew from a very early age it was my grandfather's house. Granda, the first 5 years of my life was away. What away meant I could not puzzle out, devious and cunning though I was. But when a neighbour or relative threw his name into the conversation, my father or mother would be uncomfortable, evasive. There was a lot being said in silence, in a repertoire of held looks or fleeting glances that, meant to exclude or spare me, served only to pique my curiosity. Then, in the winter of 45, he reappeared. Stood on the stone doorstep, late afternoon, a leather suitcase at his feet. I knew him from the photograph over the fire, his wedding photograph, but how I knew him was a puzzle to me then, a puzzle to me yet. I mean that I knew him, not that I recognized him. Lean, hard, tanned and tall, with deep bruises under his eyes, his fair hair bleached near white. He looked at one and the same time, younger and far, far older than the man in the photograph. I remember knowing immediately who he was, this man who had never laid eyes on me. But I don't remember saying what for years after he'd swear I said. Looks me in the eye, he'd say, drawing out the moment. Looks me up and down, leans up against the wall with his arms folded and says, "Well, is it yourself?" Him about 2 foot tall, short trousers and grazed knees, always up to mischief. "Is it yourself?" says he. "What would you make of that now?" I loved him from the start.